And I often said that, not often, but I think it's true anyway, that I had, that my musical mother was Nelly Boulanger and my musical father was Ravi Shankar, and I was their musical child. Immaculate conception.
Well, they both affected. They both had an effect on your music, even today.
I basically put together two great traditions of music: the great tradition of Indian classical music, and the great tradition of European art music. And it took me. Once I got the idea I wanted to do that, I spent 10 years on my own. I was back in New York by then. I started my ensemble. My early pieces were all exercises in strategies to combine these two streams into one, and eventually I think I did.
Oh, quite successfully.
Well, at first it wasn't that successful. I think I was off by myself for a long time, but I was also reaching the point where world music was becoming something that we knew about, that we began to think, and it had to do with America taking its place in the world as a world power. I mean, this is after the Second World War and after the Vietnam War, for that matter. And and we began to think, no, not after the Vietnam. It was just kind of like.
This would be, you're talking mid-'60s, so.
Yes, that's right. And we began to think of the world had gotten smaller. Mm-hmm. If you were an educated person, you should know the music of Africa, you should know the music of India, you should know the music of Bali, you should know the music of Europe, you should know the music of America. And when I was a kid at Europe, we didn't do that. Now all the young people are learning that.
But you know, one of the things that I know that you've said is that music world changes really slowly. People like to hold on
glacial,
to tradition,
as we say. It's very slow.
So that's tough for you for a while, I'd imagine, with new ideas.
It was, but you know, there was a good part of that. I didn't make a living at music until I was 41, which I tell everybody, including my son, who's my son who's a songwriter. He hasn't made a living yet, but he isn't 41 either, so he has a little ways to go. But I tell that to people because young people look at me and say, oh, it was easy, it was overnight. It wasn't at all. It was a lot. But the great thing about it was that, let's say I went back to New York when I was 28. So I spent another 12 or 13 years doing day jobs and working. The great thing was that I was pretty much left alone. No one really cared what I did. I had time to write. I could write operas or string quartets. I could think about things. The people that did notice me didn't like me very much, and so I wasn't the
critics
main. But at the same time, I did learn to talk to people. I started my own group, and I didn't teach. I decided I wasn't. I decided that it's a great vocation, but if you don't have the vocation, don't go there, because you're not going to help anybody. And I didn't feel I had the gifts for teaching. I didn't get any money from anybody. I decided I didn't want to ask someone else permission to play my music, so I did it myself. I started my own record companies. I put my ensemble together, and I learned that years later when I was up at I had an opera at the Metropolitan Opera in 1992 on the occasion of the 500th anniversary of the arrival of Columbus to our part of the world. And sometimes after, I remember talking to Bruce Crawford, who was the head of the board. I said, he said, well, where did you got the commission? I said, how did I get it? Why did I get it? He said, well, he said, I'll tell you, we had two people that were interested in it. He told me the other one was. He said, but we picked you, and the reason we picked you was that you seemed to, you knew music from top to bottom. You really knew what was going on, and that's true. I had worked in the theater. When I worked in the theater, I would go to lighting rehearsals. I would go to costume fittings. I would be there when they talked to the writer. I wanted to know the whole business. To me, and I've told that to the younger people. Now at this point, I have a studio in New York, and there are 3 or 4 young people around there that we call them apprentices, and they come, and when they become useful, we pay them, and when they become really useful, we can't afford them. And that's the graduation. The graduations, they get a real job.
Yeah.
But and I carry these ideas around to younger people, and I find that they're very sympathetic to this idea of you learn the business, you go out and you do the work yourself. You don't wait for that Guggenheim or that Pulitzer Prize, and you don't wait for that. You just go ahead and do it.
The key lesson from Philip Glass really is do your homework, do it yourself, and
Well, it's an old American story, isn't it?
it is.
It is an old American. And the great thing about that is that whatever you end up with, it may be a lot, it may be a little, but whatever it is, it's yours. You know, and I told that to the young people, I said, you know, you might make money, you might not. I don't know. He said, but if you love what you're doing, that's your reward every day. Don't wait for your reward. Just the reward is right now.
I know you've told interviewers that that's a real key for you, that if you're going to devote yourself to this kind of thing, you have to do it because you'll love it.
Well, it may be a long time. I moved a lot of furniture. I drove a lot of taxi. I did a lot of
Yeah, you were a
day
taxi
jobs.
driver, plumber?
Plumber, furniture mover. And by the way, I spent 3 years as the studio assistant for Richard Serra, who has a big piece here in this. Richard and I met in Europe. We both had scholarships as kids. When he came back to New York, he needed an assistant. And he liked me, and I used to help him for nothing. And then he said, look, I got to get a show together and I'll pay you. And I said, Richard, you have to understand, I'm working for a plumber now. I make $200 a week. this is 1972. He said, I'll pay you. And I gave up that, and for 3 years I worked for him. And he taught me about art, and it was through him that he made me learn it, because I had to know who David Smith and Caro, because he needed someone. He said, okay, now you got to read these books, and I'll take you around the museums. And he taught me, he said, if you're going to work for me, you have to be able to talk to you. You can't be ignorant. And that was been a great association, and through him I met Chuck Close, and we know what that led to. And I got to know Jasper Johns and Bob Rauschenberg, and it became another doorway. I've been very fortunate. I've been blessed by proximity to extremely talented men and women.